even if you are a burden at the moment and you can't get it together, we still want to help. And that burden is better than your absence.
Have you ever felt?
Are you listening? Damn. Yeah.
How'd you get into the helicopter scene?
Well, way back, I was interested to fly as a kid, in high school, and I think all of us that saw Top Gun were like, gonna be a fighter pilot, and kind of like legitimately worked towards that. Had the grades for it and talked to recruiters, but had classes, and so the counselors and the local recruiters were just like, no, it's not going to work, which is wrong. But I bought it, so I just kind of moved on. And years later, working construction, doing apartment management, working in the motorcycle shop, and just kind of got reinterested in it. And this, kind of funny story I tell is I was managing a bunch of units for a friend of mine, and he'd had a septic system at a mobile home park go out, like old Orangeburg pipe. And so we're, knee deep in shit. To get to this Orangeburg, and I was supposed to be at something at my grandmother's house, 4 hours away, and Thanksgiving or something, I forget what. But so anyways, I was late because we got done with that, and then spent like an hour in the shower with bleach, before I got on the road. And so I pull up late, and my cousin's husband is rolling up at the same time, and he's now a captain for American Airlines, but at the time a first officer, and he's like, oh, good. I'm not the only one that's late. I got stuck in a layover in Hawaii. Where were you? I did a new job. So I was just kind of the push. And that was 2006 when I started flying. And my boss, the guy that had all the units, was, he saw the writing on the wall. He was telling me 2008 was coming. And so we were talking about doing investments with taking over some hotels and doing, kind of leveling up my construction business stuff. And he's like, you could pull it off, but it's going to get rough here in the next few years. And, so I just thought, well, maybe now's a good time to just try something else. So figured out, just researching flight school. And at that time, I kind of really had an interest in physics and mechanical engineering. That's kind of what I went to school for, and never used it. But the helicopters started to interest me quite a bit. And as I learned, initially you're like, I'm not flying that thing. You got to be nuts. My uncle had flown helicopters, and I'm like, no way, but as I learned more about it and kind of actually looked into the physics, it was, to me, just better understanding. So it felt safer and more approachable. And then the type of work that the helicopters do are just more interesting to me. More
like safer than an airplane as far as the physics
in
is
some
concerned?
sense, in the sense of the ability to get the helicopter down without a runway or something similar, a piece of highway or something. I mean, certainly flying here in the mountains, I feel more comfortable in a helicopter, and some of that is my experience and time in the helicopters, but opportunity to get down, certainly. And then just, I guess, a better understanding from a physics standpoint of, how do these things work? It's not such a, whirly contraption, once you kind of understand it. So from that aspect, and then the hands-on work, being out, like today we were doing a cell tower, pulling the old stuff. I mean, don't ask me what they were doing it for, but,
sure,
pulling old stuff off the cell tower, putting new stuff on. So you're out, in the open and in the, away from town and up on the hill and in the mud. And, that to me is a lot more interesting than like my cousin's husband sitting in a tube flying to Hawaii. So I got into helicopters from that aspect, and ended up going to flight school out in San Diego, and kind of figured, it was a chunk of money to do it, but comparatively, it's like, if you bought a Corvette and wrapped it around a tree, it's probably not like the worst thing that ever happened to you in your life. And so if I dropped all that money on flight school and it never went anywhere, it's probably not something I'm sitting on my deathbed going, I wish I'd have never spent that money on helicopter training. So,
at least you got an experience, right?
And of course, it turned out great, and I'm, it was the right move, and made it all back. And doing well. So.
I've got college tuition right now that I'm paying off that I don't use.
Right.
So,
yeah.
So if you're not regretting it, I guess that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, that piece anyway.
Oh, man. So what brought you guys back to Durango?
Well, I had started working for a company. Well, after doing a few other things, I flew tours for Maverick and just kind of, that was a pretty rough scene as far as they hammer you, just, And so I was looking for something else and got on with CareFlight, flying emergency medical out of Bullhead City. And then I wanted to work their mountain bases. And so they had a base in Montrose and they had a base in Durango. I wanted the Durango base and everybody did. So, the chief pilot calls me at one point and says, hey, I can't get you in Durango, but I can get you into Montrose. And it's pretty much the same. Well, I used to come up here riding dirt bikes when I was living in San Luis Obispo. And we'd go through Montrose and Ouray and Crested Butte and stuff on dirt bikes. So I go, Chris, I've been to Montrose, and he's like, oh, well, yeah. So he calls me back a few weeks later and he says, hey, if you'll take the Montrose base, then the next Durango opening's yours. So done deal. So I went up to Montrose and spent like a year and a half, 2 years there before he got us a spot in Durango.
Nice. That's awesome. And so that was you and your wife at the time? You guys were both
No, I met her here.
Oh, okay.
So I'd moved to Durango, the Durango base, after that opened up. And she got that base soon after. She had been working for Albuquerque Ambulance, wanted off of that scene, and got in with CareFlight down there at the Gallup base, and then wanted Durango. And they put her up here not long after I'd moved up here. So we met. I did like her crew briefing right off the gate, and we kind of liked each other and started hanging out. So
nice. That's awesome. So you guys are doing, I was looking on your website, so you guys do a ton with search and rescue. And then you've got this other thing that, I don't quite understand it, but it was like almost like sonar, like if you're doing search and rescue for somebody's beacon. What is that?
So that's a cool, it's a cool piece of technology. We haven't had quite, too many opportunities to use it yet, too many call outs, but it's a great opportunity to be a part of. It's called RECCO. And RECCO does kind of based from the avalanche world. It came from Sweden. And the owner had lost a good friend to an avalanche and kind of looked into this. Yeah, it's again, don't ask me the technology involved, but yeah, it sends out a signal to a reflector. So it's an inert reflector. Doesn't have to be powered. It's not a signal creating device. It just returns the signal from the search device. And previously they'd been, handheld or originally like backpack, but like person oriented. And they've now done helicopter detectors. The RECCO handhelds are fairly well dispersed. Like Purgatory's got them. A lot of the ski patrol agencies have the RECCO search devices, handhelds. But the helicopter detectors are relatively new. There are 7 in the States, 9 in North America, something like that. And we were selected for one of them. So, wow. Pretty cool opportunity to just kind of be part of that.
What is it? So it sends out an echo and like, what is the fidelity behind it? How close can you, how close could you pinpoint somebody if they were like in an avalanche, let's say?
Yeah. So from an avalanche standpoint, you can get within basically a rotor diameter.
Okay.
So, 35 feet is the rotor diameter of the helicopter we use. And, you can get within that piece. But the big piece is you take a football field or bigger. And to us, it's more of a 4-season application finally, because, we're searching for hunters, bikers, hikers, whatever. And we can search, I think they say it's a square kilometer every 6 minutes.
Holy shit.
You're just covering,
so you're covering so much volume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even you start to, you pick up a signal and you start to cloverleaf and pinpoint that location. And yeah, sure, I can get that down to a rotor diameter if that were a debris field or something like that. But just to locate a missing person, it's like you can search a giant draw in minutes.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So do you guys do tours as well? Or
A little bit of tours. So the main portion of our business is teaching. We teach people to fly at altitude in the mountains.
Oh, okay.
And so that was something my wife and I, when we were working at CareFlight, had been kicking around. The idea of people learning to fly at altitude is treated differently everywhere but the States. So here in the States, it's a little bit like, you're a commercial pilot, work it out. And they almost kind of avoid the idea that there's additional challenges or maybe there's some need for additional training or standard because of from the litigious nature of the States, right? Where, well, if we admit that we need it, then you open up that liability and have to address it somehow and spend money to address it and, what have you. So like Europe does an excellent job of training pilots to a higher standard to fly at higher altitudes. And I'm kind of creating a little bit of stratification there in terms of, where you should be flying depending on your background.
Nice.
And they also do an excellent job of using helicopters for search and rescue applications, whereas in the States, it's a little bit more hodgepodge, I guess, kind of, whoever's available. And, there's some volunteer group that's kind of based in that area, and they grab whatever resources they can. And, it's just not as quite as well structured.
Gotcha.
And so I guess one of the, benefits of pseudo-socialism, anyway. So we'd kind of kick that idea around that, teaching pilots to fly at altitude in the mountains is hard to find. And if you do find it here in the States, it's prohibitively expensive for those of us doing it for a living. It's kind of a hobby course for private owners more than anything. And they used to have a few courses where, from a corporate standpoint, like CareFlight used to send the pilots of their mountain bases to mountain training programs. But, it got cost prohibitive, and it was easier to just say, oh, it's like any other commercial flying, and kind of sweep that under the rug. So we just wanted to make that available and make it competitive, to a typical flight school or a typical program that you might go through, and, not prohibitive or, difficult to access. So that's kind of what got us started. The other prong of that was from the search and rescue angle. So CareFlight would do what they call search assist. It wasn't search and rescue. It was more, we'll help to find people. And it was a PR move. They're hoping to get a patient, not so much effect a rescue as create a patient out of the event that could be billed for insurance, So being more of an asset for search and rescue instead of in lieu of search and rescue was kind of something we were looking to do. And so that was something we were kicking around. And then CareFlight ended up being sold to Flight for Life, to Air Methods. And Air Methods is Flight for Life. They provide the aircraft and the pilots for Flight for Life, which is the local service provider through Centura Medical, Mercy Medical Center. So, they weren't going to have two bases in Durango. Yeah. And they weren't going to close their flagship base. So they closed our base. And they'd offered to move us. We'd, just gotten married. We just had a kid. We just bought a house. And they're like, you guys can move. And they really didn't like that we were together, despite that, we'd kind of discussed whether we were willing to work together or fly together or not. And we were, and we didn't request any special scheduling or anything like that. We just kind of worked it out. So, but they were, when the company changed ownership, they were not happy about that. So I think they were kind of,
why? I mean, why were,
I don't know that it's more of my perception than anything that was straight told, but it just seemed like they were like, yeah, you guys can go here, or we won't put you, they did say we won't put you at the same base. And it was like, okay, like how do we manage that? Sure. And so they'd kind of offered us some places we didn't want to be. And we eventually just that was the kick we needed to pull the trigger. So we got one helicopter and started running.
How many helicopters do you guys have now?
3.
You have 3. Yeah. That's pretty well. And you have this simulator, like a flight simulator. So
very interesting tool also. Yeah.
Is that a VR? Is that what I was?
Yeah. Okay. So first of its kind. We're the first one in the States. And we are working with the FAA to get it certified. It's a Switzerland-based company, not Swedish like RECCO, but so Swiss-based company. They have the machine approved in Europe with EASA, which is the European Aviation, Administration. So approved there in use as a flight training tool where the hours apply to your training, things like that. But we're working with the FAA to get that approved here, and very likely just part of the process. But virtual reality based. So when you look in the cockpit spatially represents the aircraft that it duplicates or replicates exactly. So
like the physical space looks exactly
same switches, same dimensions, all of those things. But there's nothing there. So like when you look at the cockpit, the panel, it's QR codes that show the glasses where to provide the instrument information that would be there. And so it's all contained within the glasses. But very high fidelity. And then, if you're used to flying simulators, it's very kind of locked in. But if you fly helicopters, it's very not, And so, now you can fly from that aspect. And you can do things that simulators previously couldn't do, like today with the flying the material off the towers. I'm flying the load looking down,
Yeah.
manipulating that load. And obviously a simulator with a screen can't do that. Well, this simulator can.
That's wild.
So, yeah, very high fidelity, again, that gets into the technicalities, but it meets the requirements for, 10 and 20 and $30 million full flight simulators that take up a room. And we're kind of working with the FAA to redraft those requirements, because the requirements, for instance, like, well, it must have a screen that is within 6 foot of the occupant that has a field of view of X amount of degrees. Well, it's VR, so it has that, but that's not how it's represented.
Gotcha.
So they're trying to go through that process of, and the FAA is buying it. Like, yeah, clearly, I mean, you got the field of view we need. So how do we redraw?
So I got to restructure towards your deal. Have you, what is your thoughts on, from having actually flown helicopters many times, going into the VR machine, is it fairly, does it feel or seem like it, like if you were training in there? Yeah,
amazingly so. So I'd flown simulators through my training, and they were obviously more primitive, almost 20 years ago. And, but I appreciated it as a tool. I thought it was a great tool for certain applications. And I did enjoy flying it more than some. A lot of people didn't. So I had go to Heli Expo, and, kind of a industry event type thing. And I told my wife, that, hey, the main reason I'm here is to see the different simulators and kind of see what the progress has been in the last 15 years at that time. And I was really kind of dismayed. I'd flown the machine that I'd flown previously. I don't want to say the name here, but, it was a machine that I appreciated at that time. And then I flew their newest offering, and I kind of went like, that doesn't really get it,
Just hadn't changed much? They hadn't advanced?
Yeah, like hardly at all. And so I'd flown a few others, and I kind of went like, oh, well, all right, they're not bad, I guess. But, these are not cheap. I mean, $250,000 at minimum, $500,000. I mean, it's like a pretty good investment. So it's got to be something that's, worthwhile, especially for our little company. I mean, I could buy another helicopter for that, So it's like, well, it's got to be worthwhile. And we just happened by this company's booth. They were in the back corner. It was one of their first years kind of, promoting their new prototype stuff. And they were allowing you to fly it. And it was very kind of out there. And I kind of walked by and, shy, like, oh, I don't know, kind of over it. And my wife's like, you should fly it. And the guy actually caught me. You want to fly it? And on the spot, okay. So I flew it at that time. It represented the training aircraft that a lot of people know, the R-22, very little, small, typical training aircraft, and picked up the aircraft and it flew like the aircraft. It's been a while since I'd flown one, so I flew it a little squirrelier than I used to, but it was like, oh, this is probably how I would feel in this machine after this much time. And I felt, gosh, it's kind of tucking the one skid, like maybe the wind is off to my left, like I would notice in the helicopter. It's something you'd not notice in a typical simulator, So, well, what the heck, I'll turn it. And so pedal turned, 90 degrees to the left, and sure enough, there's the windsock. So they'd set it up to
okay.
I'll check that out, So I was like, wow, that's impressive. And, a few other maneuvers I flew that were well replicated. The simulators tend to have a lot of difficulty with what the FAA has coined edge of envelope physics. So, lift, weight, thrust, drag, the thing moves through the air, blah, 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 basic physics, like video game stuff. But aerodynamic anomalies, vortex ring state, where the air recirculates and the helicopter doesn't respond as it should. And, the machine was able to replicate well. And so I landed and, kind of talked to the guy and walked away. And my wife said, well, what'd you think of that one? And I said, if I taught you to fly that simulator, I'd let you take the machine. And she goes, stop, we're going back. So I went back, and he's like, you're back. And I go, we got to talk some more, So we've kind of developed a relationship, and we're able to get in, at a point where
kind of ground level.
I couldn't touch it at this point. And we're the first one in the States and all that, where it's like this, kind of a part of that program instead of just kind of a, early customer. So
that's cool. I mean, to build that type of a relationship, with a simulator that seems way advanced, I mean,
it's kind of the first. I mean, there are simulators that are probably pretty close to those multi-million-dollar, but for a initial training or small operation, doesn't make sense. It's cheaper to fly the helicopter.
Sure.
And so those have obviously been geared toward bigger companies where, hey, it's cheaper for us not to take the helicopter offline. We're going to send you to fly this sim. And so this is the first time that there's that level of fidelity available, economically and efficiently to people in this kind of ab initio environment. So
So how far out or how far away do you think you are working with the FAA to get this to where you could use it towards training hours?
They said they would like to have it certified by the end of last year.
Oh, good. Yeah. So just, yeah, that sounds like a typical government answer, right?
So, but they are moving. I mean, I actually give them pretty good credit. As far as the FAA goes, they do seem to be, actively interested and moving pretty quickly on it and kind of doing it right. So yeah. I don't anticipate it'll be a long time, but ultimately it would be helpful because it allows us to credit some of the flight hours and reduce the amount of time you're actually flying under blades. So for cost, but we're using it currently as just a proficiency tool. So
for your own,
right. We're able to fly it as part of your training. I just can't credit you the hours. So you still have to fly the flight time.
Gotcha.
But when you get to the requirement, you're ready instead of, well, hey, we got to keep working on it. So we've done a program now where we're doing package training. So one of the major issues with flight training is, well, they said the minimum was 40 hours, but the national average is 65 and I have 70 hours and I don't have a private, and how far out, how deep into this am I?
Yeah.
And especially for a lot of these young kids, first career, parents are helping them out and they're like, what have I got myself into, and, I'm 50 grand into this and my kid's not halfway and uh-oh. And so we've said, hey, I'll put my money where my mouth is and I'll offer a package. I'll guarantee your graduation because, if you suck, I can put you in the sim and I can get you up to speed, and it's, it's time and it's effort, but it's not blade time that I'm going to go broke.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can't eat the blade time, but I can eat some sim time and get you back up to speed. So
that's pretty amazing, man. That's like that, once approved, through you guys would be able to offer that to the masses. That's huge.
Yep. And it allows for, training for certain aspects that you just can't do in the helicopter, actual tail rotor failure. I mean, we can simulate that. We can replicate it. We can take your feet off the pedals, that sort of thing. But you can't just make the tail rotor stop, or even simpler things like auto rotation. We train that obviously heavily in the aircraft, but there's a risk to it. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't train it in the helicopter, but you can cover a lot of it in the simulator before. Sure. Or, hey, this auto's not looking so great. Let me take the controls. And instead, hey, that auto's not looking so great. What's your plan? So it allows you to do a lot of things that you otherwise can't. How
does it work with all the I understand that it's QR to the VR headset, right? But when you're reaching up to hit like a switch, and I know nothing about anything.
I've picked it up, but so they have like basically a structure around the platform that moves that has cameras that track your finger movements.
Okay.
So you're able to, when you reach up to manipulate a switch or an instrument, you see your hand in the glasses.
Wow.
And then tactilely.
Yeah.
Tactilely. Anyway, when you touch that button or that adjustment, it feels just like the helicopter.
Like you feel it? You feel something? Like are you wearing gloves or something?
No.
Oh.
The panel represents those manipulatable switches and buttons exactly. So when you touch the button, it's the same sort of button that you would feel in the helicopter. There's just nothing but that button on the actual panel. It's only in your glasses that it says this button's for, scroll on the panel or, whatever. And then the change in the instrument only happens in the software.
Oh, wow.
Not, to the outside.
That is crazy. What kind of support do they give you guys for any of that stuff?
They had training guys out here for us and, did a great job. And then we had a hardware problem with the machine and, I kind of helped troubleshoot them and they're like, yeah, we'll send a tech. And so from Switzerland, here comes their tech.
Woo!
So yeah, it's been great.
Yeah.
They also don't want the machines to become antiquated at all. So part of your program is that, it's pretty hefty annual, support fee or whatever. But if they update the machine with new goggles, you get the new goggles.
Got you.
So there's no nobody will have like an early version. Everything's
they kind of keep you up to the latest advancements that they've made. That sounds amazing. Kind of want to make me go fly your helicopter.
You come check us out. It's a ton of fun. Yeah, we're even kind of hoping to open it to the public for more casual, like Friday night flights type thing. Just come in, hang out, fly the thing. Have a good time, get to know us. Where it's like, yeah, maybe you're not like ready to train to be a commercial helicopter pilot, but you can come hang out, check stuff out, go for a flight, so it makes it a little more accessible too.
We were out in Salt Lake at some point this winter, and we were staying at a VRBO, driving by this place, and start to be like, what is that? There's like a line. I mean, like people just lined up outside this brick building. Oh, what the hell's going on here? So it's like, it did some Googling, and it's they've got a VR, basically like the skydiving, but with the squirrel suit.
Whoa.
And it's a full on set. So I start watching the video of how they're doing it, and you jump off of a ledge, and that's obviously how you start. And like, there's this contraption that pulls you up, and as you're turning, it's doing similar obviously to what you're doing, like moving your physical body, and they've got like wind and stuff like that. And it's, dude, I was watching the videos, like
a platform that you kind of lay on.
Well, no. So you're in the actual like regular squirrel suit. You just have a helmet on, but it's a VR helmet.
Sure.
And so the wind is pulling you up like it normally would. You know, it's just blowing fans, but the cables and the hydraulics are actually moving,
stabilizing
in reference to where your head's going, you know? And, dude, I was like, let's do it. And my son's like, God, Dad, let's go. And I'm like, how much does this cost? $800. We're not going, bud.
Yeah,
but
sorry.
I was like, we can watch YouTube for free all day. So,
wow. I mean, that's steep, but what a cool experience.
Oh man.
And they have those, the skydive tubes with the big, where you legitimately,
yeah. Oh yeah. You know, like practicing
free fall. Yeah. Which seems really cool. But, the squirrel suit thing is like, pretty inaccessible unless you're going to go through the like multiple jumps and get, to that level.
Unless you're a psycho like Andy Stump or something, and you're just a part of that arena.
So I mean, it's not something you can you can go, hey, I'm going to go to Moab and go skydiving this weekend, but you're not squirrel suiting unless you get into it.
Sure.
So to be able to access, even for a guy that's like, I'm a pretty regular skydiver, but I wanted to try this out without diving full in, might be worthwhile.
Yeah, it was crazy, man. They have even things like, getting a little bit too close and like almost like you get hit with like sand, as you're, coming to, it was wild. I was like, that's crazy. But they had a video, kind of a showcase of opening weekend. And it was a line out the door when we saw it, and it had already been open for a year. Wow. I mean, people were just waiting to do it. But that weekend it had to have been 300-400 people just in line for hours to do this thing. And I'm like, man, that's so crazy. So watching that video, and now I'm going, oh, the helicopter, this seems wild.
It's been an awesome tool for us. I was kind of hoping it'd be like a 1-to-1 replacement. So in other words, like if you flew 5 hours in the helicopter and 5 hours in the simulator, it'd be as if you'd flown 10 hours in the helicopter.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing better than that.
Really?
It's more helpful than just the helicopter.
What are your hopes that the FAA allows for? Like a 1-to-1?
It depends on how there's a structure of like what the approval levels are. And, in most cases, if you can get to kind of a basic level, then you can apply a certain amount of your sim time toward your certification. And so that would be kind of the main piece. And that doesn't take a huge leap. Like that was available to the sims that I flew 15 years ago. So that's, more or less a slam dunk. It's just time. Yeah. What we're kind of considering is going up to the full flight simulator level, which would go compete with like companies like Flight Safety, who that's all they do. They've got, a bunch of these full room $30 million sims around the country, and companies send their pilots to them for their recurrent training. Or initial even, like a lot of your airline guys don't even fly an airplane until there's passengers, and, they do all their training at Flight Safety. So on that level, then it gets a little political though, because, now you're stepping on toes. Guys, they got a lot invested. So, but that would allow us to do things like my recurrent training for my company. So every year the FAA has to come out and we fly my aircraft and take it out of service and, go through the maneuvers so I can show the FAA that I, remember how to fly. And, I could do that in the simulator if it represents that.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
And then that opens the door to, hey, Flight for Life, instead of pulling your machine out of service, you could send your guys to my machine. Doesn't even have to be me. You could send your examiners.
Sure.
That you could use the machine because it meets the requirements.
So. Does this company that you guys have kind of partnered with, do they make a larger scale of this? Like you talk about these other companies that have, $3 million machines or whatever it is in these huge warehouses. Do they make another version that's
No, because this version does that.
Oh, okay.
Right? The need for that size is the visual fidelity, all the screens, all of the things that have to be incorporated into this simulator previous to the VR.
Yeah.
And the technology that they're using for maneuvering the platform, that this small package meets all of those issues. So in some ways better, like it's able to meet a faster rate of roll to replicate the movement of the aircraft.
What does that mean? Like physically roll?
Yeah, the change in angle from flat to
gotcha.
wings over. You know, and when you have a machine the size of a room, it takes a certain amount of, you know,
Sure.
And this little platform doesn't
How
take
big
that.
is it? How, like physically?
It would fit in this room easily.
Really?
Yeah. In fact, the enclosure would be similar to this. I think it's like 12 by 12, 9 feet tall is the enclosure, safety enclosure, and the camera mounts. And then the platform itself kind of sits up, a few feet, and there's steps up to it to the cockpit and where the pilot sits, and then an instructor station. And it would all fit in this room.
That's freaking wild, man.
Yeah.
That just seems like that would just be such an advancement for not only you guys, but the industry. You know, it's like
I've kind of, in the press stuff that they asked for me, one of my lines was, I don't, in 10 years or even sooner, I don't think if you don't have one of these machines that you can effectively be a flight school.
yeah, I mean,
huge.
like you say, I mean, I obviously, again, I know nothing about flying a helicopter or an airplane or anything, but when you say the stopping, that you were like taking your feet off the pedal, stopping the back rotor, right? You can't really truly simulate that
Sure.
in the air in a real helicopter. So it's like, if you need to do that as part of your training, like all these industries, I mean, I come from oil and gas, and like they preach safety, everything, like obviously aviation, we stole so much from every article that any airline company ever wrote, It's like, why'd you have the button so close to, so it's like, you hear that over and over and over again. So it's like, why would you ever put a physical body into a helicopter in the air to practice something that you need to know, but you really don't want to tempt it live unless you absolutely have to, right? If it means, hey, we've got an oh shit moment, we need to know how to do it, but let's just not.
I mean,
let's not roll
like I
the
said, you
dice.
can kind of replicate it, but it's not the same. And then to see it through also, like, okay, you think that's going to work? Great. Put me on the ground, and in the actual helicopter, it's kind of, well, all right, we're here, In the sim, you just go like, yeah, we're alive. It was rough. Might try that one again. So a great one that came out that we haven't kind of, exploited yet. So maybe depending on who's in your audience, this could be good. But Airbus, who the company that the simulator represents, that represents their H-125, kind of their ubiquitous light utility helicopter that we also operate, has come out with service bulletin, or kind of a industry thing that they put out, that a maneuver or a situation that we call vortex ring state, I kind of alluded to earlier, where the helicopter is essentially descending through its own downwash and doesn't respond like you might typically expect.
So what does that mean, though, real quick for the audience? So
so when the blades are creating lift, affecting aerodynamic lift, they're pushing a downwash off the back side of the blades. And so what that does is kind of recirculate back into the rotor system.
Okay.
And so it has various aerodynamic impacts for us, whether you're hovering in ground effect and that recirculation is sort of dissipated by the ground, or whether you're out of ground effect, it's going to change the way the helicopter performs. Then if you are to begin descending through that disturbance, the blades are just not aerodynamically able to be as efficient. So they essentially stall in a way. And the helicopter begins descending, and an additional pitch or bite, or what would typically give us more lift, works the opposite way. It exacerbates the descent. And so that's something obviously we want to train and be aware of, right? Awareness is number one, avoidance, and then recovery. So we teach all those things in our training environment. But there were a few accidents that were, potentially attributed to training that, or not necessarily not knowing about it, but more so training or experimenting with that state of flight. And so Airbus at that time kind of came out and said, yeah, for our helicopters, your life limited components are not based on operating in that configuration. And so you kind of read between the lines that life limited components on a helicopter is everything. You can buy a 50-year-old helicopter that's as expensive as a brand new helicopter because the life limited components have good times remaining. So it's all about, there's nothing on a helicopter that's 50 years old that's still 50 years old. Everything's been replaced. So, if they come out and say, hey, essentially we could pull the rug out from under your life limited components if we think you've been in vortex ring state too much, whatever that is. So I see where they're coming from to limit their liability and the fatigue on their components and all of those things. But from a training aspect, it's like, well, how the hell are we supposed to get around that?
Yeah, how do you train if you can't reproduce that live?
Well, hey, I got the only simulator that represents an Airbus aircraft that can replicate vortex ring state without impacting your life limited components. So, come on down.
Come on down. Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously we still train that in our aircraft, but it's one of those things that could definitely lead that direction. There's still some, people are incredulous about simulators to some extent. I just don't like sims. They make me sick, whatever. And yeah, that can be true. But as they get better and better and better, it almost becomes like, well, less likely to be, sickness inducing, but also like, well, get over it. It's part of the deal.
Yeah.
You need to fly the simulator to be an effective pilot as it continues to improve its technology and the applications that you can, use it for. So.
Yeah. How many hours you got to have to actually get your license, your pilot's license?
So a private pilot certificate's 40 hours, and that's the minimum, but national average is 65 or so to just be proficient. Commercial pilot's 150. And that's kind of the big joke is that, at 150, the FAA says like, go forth and be a pilot.
Yeah.
And
I was thinking you were going to say like 10,000 hours or something ridiculous, like 4 years of training.
I mean, that's a ton. I mean, I've been flying almost 20 years. I have 7,000 plus hours. So that's a, fairly high time pilot. From the helicopter world anyway, it's like, it's always interesting because you get like the airline guys go, well, I have 25,000 hours. And I go, yeah, but you sleep for 8 hours at a time on your transcontinental flights, it's a little different, but it is it's kind of our gauge in terms of, experience. And, so I've been doing this a while. And if you fly 1,000 hours a year, I mean, that's a heavy
lot of flying
schedule.
How long does it take, months, years to get through the 40 hours? Or is it
40 hours could be done pretty quickly. Yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily recommend it, but you could do it in 4 or 6 weeks.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that can be done pretty quickly.
Yeah.
The commercial 150, but like I say, in the industry, yes, you're certified, but you're not employable.
Sure.
So that's where, now you're building 1,000 or 1,500 hours or, or so before you're kind of into that like entry-level professional tier.
Gotcha. So what is the entry level, 40 hours, 50 hours, 60 hours, they come to you, they're running wrenches, and if they get some time to go up, they get in and build additional flight hours, or how does that typically work?
No, not quite. So we teach pilots from 0 time. So if you want just a private, although, there's not a lot of that, I have kind of some, clients that have done well for themselves that just want a private for whatever reason. But mostly it's, career-oriented pilots that are coming to us to learn, to do it commercially. And so we start at 0 time. It's not that you have to come to us having the private in hand. And we get a private along the way, but they're looking for commercial and to be able to progress in that way. The wrenches, a lot of people do ask like, hey, is there any work I could do on the side? Obviously to just, help fray the costs and those things. But to work on an aircraft, that's a whole separate pathway. So you've got to be what we call AMP, airframe and power plant certified, which is a very similar process to becoming a pilot. Obviously different focus, but very similar kind of certification process. So you can't really, turn wrenches on one to get by.
Sure.
But, obviously we try to incorporate students in our maintenance and things like that for learning and experience, but yeah, not as kind of a way to get through it.
Sure. Yeah. Can't do an internship.
And then the commercial program's about 1.5 years, 12 to 15 months. I usually tell my students, try not to fly less than about 5 hours a month, but flying more than about 5 hours a week is also, heavy load. So, 10 hours a month is kind of a sweet spot. You can kind of figure 15 months, 150 hours.
How many guys you got coming through the program? I shouldn't say guys. How many people?
Yeah, guys, gals. That's an interesting subtopic we might jump into, but it's a tough number to pin down because some guys are there every week and some just on the weekends and some once a month, and they're at various stages of their training. So, but I probably have 20 or so active clients a year. A better gauge might be how many graduates we do a year, how many check rides. Mm-hmm. And, that's usually 15 to 20 graduates per year.
Wow. That's pretty good. I mean, that seems...
Yeah. I mean, we've been very happy with our volume, especially considering Durango being such a small area. It's one of our things that we don't do the typical aircraft that you might see for a flight training program. One, because it just doesn't work in this environment. But our focus is high altitude, teaching you to fly at altitude in the mountains. And so we're not just drawing from, hey, you're the closest flight school, so I guess I'm coming to you. We get people bypassing other flight schools because of what we offer.
The specifics of the training.
Drawing people to this area for what we do.
That's pretty crazy. I can't even imagine. I can't. It's a little scary, but like, I mean, you know, like if you go up and you're practicing something, like in my mind, you know, if you go up and you're practicing a specific thing at that phase of your training, and let's say it's 30 minutes to an hour, and you know, whatever that process takes, all the checks, and I have no idea of how much physical time that actually takes. But you know, I come from a electrical background, and so it's like that's why I threw out the 10,000 hours, because you know it's like the classic, you know, you 40 hours a week, and by the time you have 10,000 hours, you're apparently an expert. You really don't know shit. Now you got to continue your education, right, to learn. But yeah, I mean, to hear 60, it's like, oh, that's not many hours at all. But
Right.
I'm going,
It
well, I
isn't,
mean,
you know?
behind the stick though, there's
There is
probably
something
a
for
bit.
that. You know, like I said, like 1,000 hours a year would be a pretty heavy schedule for a pilot. And so, you know, if 2,000 hours a year is kind of your 40-hour work week,
Yeah.
you know, 1,000 hours in the seat off the ground, you know, that's a lot of work hours to get 1,000 hours, you know,
Yeah.
with
Now
skids
that you're
up,
putting
you know?
it into context, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want a pilot
That
who's
doesn't
flying that
count. The
much, you know?
fueling, that doesn't count. Pulling them, it doesn't count any of it, you know? So yeah, that's, you know, you're working more than 2,000 hours a year if you're flying 1,000 hours.
Yeah. Oof. Yeah. No, that seems intense, man. So, well, yeah. So what do you guys got on the horizon? Cause I saw the other video where, and I don't know, maybe it was just a promotional thing, but there was like this Jeep, or maybe it was like a Humvee or something with like tracks on it. And
that was quite a while back. So that was just kind of a promo thing, cross collaboration that we did with Kyle Foundation.
Okay. Yeah.
And Colorado Gunfighter, JJ Ronzone. He's going to be bad.
That's all right. We love you, JJ. Sorry about that.
He hooked us up with those guys, and JJ and I worked together doing some air tactical stuff, shooting out of the helicopter. I mean, we've been buddies. We've been trying to do some stuff together for a long time. So he hooked that up pretty early on. It was just a Jeep that was built to benefit Kyle, and they wanted some film, and it just worked out nice to put
It was
helicopter
sick.
with it.
I was like, what is this, man? I felt like a total nerd watching it.
Yeah, that was fun. So no, nothing new there. We're working on putting a machine up on the Front Range up in Denver, just to kind of, you know, access that market and kind of cover things up there.
Another VR machine or physical, like another base?
Training location, be a physical helicopter to start. Yeah. So working on that. We've got the search and rescue stuff going. We're trying to bring cellular detectors to the area.
What is
which
that?
is a neat technology we demoed a couple weeks ago to the Plata County SAR. It's basically a mini cell tower that's set up in the aircraft. And so if you're missing, we can get your cell phone information from your loved ones or what have you, and be able to pinpoint that cell. So if your cell is on and active, doesn't have to be in service. In fact, it's better if it's not, because you know, it's a little bit easier to get through the noise.
It would find your tower versus
basically it'll see my tower as a point of service and not have the noise of competing with other towers and other units. So it can pick you up, pinpoint you, just line of sight, same as a cell tower. So it's not like I have to be real close. And then we can call you through that. We can text message you. We could do broad-based text messaging. So let's say, hey, there's a fire moving through this area. You need to move to the south. There's a pickup location at the lake edge or whatever. You could broadcast that to anybody in range, you know. So it could be a neat tool there that we're trying to bring to the area. So always trying to push the search and rescue stuff, which it's interesting because it's very political and it's very like, well, we'd love to use you, but how do we get the funding?
Yeah.
But we've always kind of said, well, we're not going anywhere. We're going to be here. And it's one of the things that we've said we'd always keep an asset here locally. You know, most helicopter companies are kind of contract based. So government contracts, you know, fire, and they'll win a bid for a region, and you know, congratulations, you're based in McCall, Idaho. You know, send your machine up there and see you in September. You know, and it's good money, and you know, so it's the business model that most of them use. But we've kind of, you know, gone away from that, or not gone away, but just you know, stayed out of that so far, so that we can keep assets here. And at some point, as we're able to expand and put something on, you know, contracts like that, that's great. But it won't be to pull assets out of this area. So we're always here and available for community support. You know, when some of the other operators that are contract based are, they'll offer that when they can, but they're often gone. So, we're always kind of working that angle. I mean, honestly, where I've been personally is just, I lost my wife over Christmas. She was a big, piece of it. She was a partner of mine to make this happen and push me to do a lot of the stuff that I would have never tried to take on. And so we got 2 kids at home and just trying to kind of get that all figured out. The joke I've told recently is, it's hard to run a business during school hours. So
I shouldn't laugh, but that's a good one.
So kind of trying to figure that one out. And so, just kind of.
So when did she get out of the flight business?
So when CareFlight closed, she left, flying at that time as a flight paramedic and went back to the ambulance with Pagosa Springs.
Okay.
And she did that to, to support us, to keep, pay the rent.
So she went through that, and you guys were just starting this venture?
Right.
At this, basically simultaneous?
Right.
Okay.
And then she did that late 2016 or early 2017 to about 2020. And then business started getting busy enough that I needed her help at home and with the business, and then also, able to support us well enough that she didn't have to bring home the bacon. So we got her out of that, and she was starting to struggle with, I think just the cumulative nature of that impact, the nights and the, the exposure, and all that. So it was good to get her out of it, but it also kind of left her without a direction or a kind of an anchor. Mm-hmm. So it caused a little trouble for her, I think. But so yeah, she was there until 2020, and then was kind of home with the kids and doing that angle for the last couple of years. Yeah.
Was she? Did she do anything after that? I think did you tell me she was working with or had previously worked during Katrina?
Yeah. So she had worked ground-based ambulances, kind of throughout her career. So she worked at Okaloosa County, Florida.
Gotcha.
And at that time was kind of repurposed, or that's not what they call it, but, that agency was put assets in New Orleans in that area for Katrina. And so, yeah, she did. She covered a lot of that. She spent 30 days out of her house just in the ambulance and at the base, and didn't get to go home, covering that for that whole time.
It's brutal, man. They the ask that they put on that industry is crazy. Like my sister-in-law recently she just changed positions, but she was managing the ICU here, and it was whatever. She's not on camera now, but I don't care. So, it's like she came on to kind of talk about it just, post-COVID, and it was just some of the stories. I mean, whether you believe in COVID, don't believe in COVID, I could give 2 shits. It's like, that's a human being that's working 85 hours straight, literally.
Yeah. Whatever
sleeping on a cot.
Situation was, it definitely caused an impact for sure.
And it seems like it just, I don't know. It's really, to me, it's always been an industry it's the only industry that we ask to really do that. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, you've got OSHA governing every contractor in the world, right? You can't work over, and if it's so many hours, you have to have X amount of hours of sleep.
Sure.
And, but it's like all of a sudden we just turn a blind eye because we know that they're the only people that can help when shit really hits the fan. And it's like, we're asking that, and it just puts so much on the individual.
Well, and it's unfortunate. I mean, they obviously still have regulations to that effect, and safety management systems and things of that nature. But we kind of called it, so I'm gonna get in trouble. We called it litigation mitigation. It wasn't for us. It wasn't to get us home. It was so that when we're dead, you could stand up in court and say it wasn't your fault.
100%. Yeah.
And so we fought that, and I still do. With CareFlight, we had to go through that with our risk assessment matrix, and it was basically like, come up with a number to reflect where you were on various aspects. And, ultimately it was again, so they could say, well, he went through this and it says that he was okay to go flying, not a legitimate. And I suppose for some people it's helpful that, like, hey, this guy who's afraid to speak up, was able to kind of put on paper that, hey, boss, I don't feel up to this for these reasons. And maybe it's helpful in that regard. But for me, I always felt like, hey, look, if I'm comfortable taking the flight, then I've evaluated those things with how I feel, and it's always going to be subjective, and I'm okay to go do this. Or I'm not, and I'm going to tell you that, and I'm not going to be shy about it. I'm not going to feel bad about it.
Yeah.
And I guess that's not everybody's position. So in some regard, that could be helpful. And it is nice to kind of put it on paper and kind of go like, you know, because a lot of us are type A, like, you know, I can get it done. I'm all right, you know. And then you start looking on paper, oh, well, actually, I am a little sick. And yeah, my dog did die. And yeah, that weather is closing in. And well, that aircraft does have a little faulty piece of it. This is starting to not look so good. So, you know, it has its benefits, but it's not something that is well shaken out, you know. Mm-hmm. And they put a lot on those people. And, you know, she, like I said, she'd lost her roof of her house, and they went by one time to check it out and grab some stuff out of her house, and that was it. She had a house with no roof on it for 30 days that she just had to go back in. She was helping other people until she could go deal with that. So then she went from there to Albuquerque ambulance, and Albuquerque's, it's a whole different animal. She worked, you know, weekend graveyard in Albuquerque. And I think that's what I think really weighed on her, you know, was this like the human atrocities of that. Not so much the traumas, right? We all get in a car accident and it's grotesque, and, you know, or you get burned up and it's disgusting and it stinks, but, you know, you go, man, that could be me. I have no problem helping this guy out, you know? But the meth fueled, just disgusting things that people do to one another, you know, that's hard to see and be a part of.
Yeah. You think it just built over the years? I mean, did you guys ever talk about it?
Oh, sure. You know, and it's hard because, you know, you don't know how much to make her talk about it. And she's, you know, outright told me, like, I mean, she told me some things that were horrific, and then also said, I'm not going to tell you about other things because you don't need that in your head.
Sure.
Know? So it's tough. And I think a lot of those people can only reach out to their compatriots, you know, because they're the only ones that know. And then they also feel like you're not hurting them. You're not corrupting them by saying, hey, I'm struggling with this for whatever reason, because they've got something that you're like, yeah, I'm okay. You know?
Because they've gone through it with them.
And so I straddled that line for her, you know, being a emergency medical pilot. I'm removed, you know, I'm the pilot. I'm not hands-on. I'm there, but we're also not usually the first responders. You know, the helicopter's not usually the first one on scene. And so there's insulation there. And then also it's not just quite as, you know, visceral, like I was saying, just like that, the atrocities, the meth fueled crap that she was just there for, helping the cops or patching up the cops that got, you know, involved in that or whatever. The helicopter's just not there for that stuff. So, you know, I had a taste of it, but not to the level she did. So I could understand and help her some, but not all the way. You know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, because you know, and I don't have a direct connection, you know, but like going back to my sister-in-law and just kind of hearing some of her stories, and she legally at that time hadn't transferred positions and she was still managing. So A, she couldn't be on camera, and B, we had to talk for like an hour before we started recording, because it was like, I can't talk about this. I've got to be
ground rules,
you know, and it was like, look, if something is said, I promise to God, we will cut it out. I will not get you in trouble. Like,
right.
You know, but talking to her, like, and she's very reserved, you know, but like, it just seems like, again, going back to that industry, it's like we as the public, we never ask for our emergency medical service folks or members or police officers to help us, right? They just sign up for it. Like, I've never, you know, reached out or put a message and been like, hey, can I get some help from an EMT? Right. Or like, you know, it's never like, we just expect
why aren't you here
it.
yet?
Yeah. We just expect it to be there. And I don't mean calling 911, but I'd be like, you know, it's like, you're not going to your neighbor asking to borrow a shovel, right?
Sure.
You just expect that they're there. And at the same time, we expect as society for them to be 100% on point. And we also openly, or maybe we turn a blind eye to the fact that A, they're people, they have lives outside of saving our lives or helping us. And then we just expect them to be unwavering at the fact, and in a sense like that they can't have depressive, tendencies. They can't struggle because, it's almost like we hold them to a higher regard of they're better than that, right? They're the ones who help us with our shit. They're the ones who diagnose us with these things or that things, or they fix us. So they can't be subject to those,
sure,
normal things that we all are experiencing, and it's a weird situation. And again, I don't have I'm not as close to it as obviously you've experienced, but I could hear it in the tone of her voice is like, man, this is, I can tell that fucked with her, like some of those stories. And it's like, you walk away from it and you go kind of like, I almost feel like I need to ask. Mm-hmm. But in a weird way, I felt like, I don't know, like it wasn't my place to ask. It's like, still going into that headspace of like, well, she's got it. I mean, she's running a fucking ICU. Mm-hmm. She's got it figured out. But then you think about it weeks and months, and then I hear, your story, or at least, what you kind of briefly described, and I'm like, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be that line of like, okay, of, at the end of the day, these are just people, and even if it's at that industry level, right? Like if your wife wasn't comfortable talking to you, right, because she didn't want to put that burden on you, why the fuck is she responsible to hold that burden? Mm-hmm. Why does she have to bear that burden? Mm-hmm. Why does she feel like it? Is it the industry saying, you're supposed to be above that? You should be able to absorb that hit in life, mm-hmm. And that's clear. That's not the case. That's not. And
it's tough to navigate though. I mean, I don't think that there's, at least within the industry, from the paramedic side, from what I saw, they're not sort of ostracized for saying, hey, I've got a problem, and I don't want to talk about this call or just whatever's going on at home, or, but it's really tough to navigate. They did some things that she alluded to at like Albuquerque ambulance where, if you were involved in XYZ type of call, you had to go to, like a debriefing, and that's like, that's not what, what people want either, know? And then sometimes you go like, maybe you go to some, atrocious call and you go, hey, I'm doing all right, and then the next call for whatever reason hits different. And so you're supposed to go through the process with this call because it meets some criteria that a bean pusher picked out.
Yeah.
And then on the next one you're struggling and it's like, oh, well, that doesn't meet the requirement, or, so it is very tough to navigate, I think something she used to say a lot is like, she just felt like a lot of those people kind of lived in her head, whether she wasn't able to help them and so I don't know how you navigate that. I mean, you're exposing these people to tough shit, Mm-hmm. And the nights, I mean, there's volumes of research that, working a graveyard shift isn't good for you any aspect of your health. And then it's like, oh yeah. And while you're working that graveyard shift, it's not, I don't want to diminish anybody's graveyard job, but it's you're dealing with some heavy stuff.
It's hard on your body physically. I mean, even like as subtle as this is, again, going back to my sister-in-law, fucking doctor, whatever, she, the changing of, going to, daylight savings times, mm-hmm. huge disruption on the human body for months after that. That's 1 hour.
Yeah.
So, okay. Yeah. We're exposing ourselves to that change. Like there's so many studies about working graveyard shift.
Yep.
And then you layer on top of that, all the atrocities that she saw in Albuquerque.
And they've tried to mitigate that. They say, oh, well, you should just only work 12s. Like pilots can only work, we work 14s, but essentially it becomes 12 on, 12 off.
Yeah.
But the crew could work 24s or 48s. And they, in some regard, that was nicer because, they are expected to get some rest on shift and,
sure.
And where the pilot's like kind of expected to be more or less, available. And so it has its ups and downs, but it's almost like it works better for some people, in some regards, and to try to pigeonhole everybody into one or the other is tough too. I mean, it's hard to cover a 24-hour situation, it really is.
Are you doing okay with it all?
I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to, it's hard to say.
I mean, there's a lot to that. You know, I think we're barely opening up the envelope here, but I mean, what happened to you? The loss of your wife, you know, it's huge, man. And like that's the thing that I think is same situation. You know, it's like if she didn't feel like she wanted to put that burden, you know, you know, it's not your responsibility to carry that burden as well, right? There's people like, I just want you to know that publicly and whatever, like, you know, you don't always have to smile. It can be fucking rough. And right. I applaud you for moving along and doing what you're doing and running a business and raising your children alone and getting through this and coming on this show and shaking my hand. But like, if you got some things that you need to talk about, like, I just want everybody, not even you, to know. It's like, just go talk to somebody. It doesn't have to be a therapist. It could be a fucking buddy, but
I appreciate that. And I think the industry that we're in does kind of recognize that. So I've had a lot of people reach out and, you know, it's, you know, I feel like that's available and I don't really struggle with that, thankfully, you know, cause I think it could be totally, and it could turn at any moment type thing. It's not something that you kind of have a single path for, you know? Sure. So, but I'm doing okay. You know, it sucks, but it's, you know, it's going okay.
Good.
JJ's real good about that. I get a text from him about every, you know, doing all right. So, and most people, you feel like, you know, he knows that game. So if he's asking and the answer's no, he's okay. Then what? You know?
Yeah. What do we do?
Whereas, you know, when your mom asks, you know, I'm okay, Mom. You know?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you got the, you know, you've got the real ones in your life, and
that she wouldn't, you know, of course, but you know,
no, but there's, you know, I think same thing, man. There's certain people that are always I'm doing great, man. You know, that like see that photo of like it's like goes around on the internet every 6 months or something. It's like a dad like holding his daughter with like arrows in his back, and it's like, are you okay? I'm doing great. How you guys doing? You know, it's like. Yeah, no, we're trying to hold up the fucking world, man, you know, but it's sometimes like, you know, yeah, I'm glad to hear that you've got people like JJ. You got a real person that genuinely reaches out, has nothing to gain from it. Doesn't matter. It's just a text message. And I think that's what a lot of people, they either don't have it, you know, and it's like on this show, I've just talked to so many people that, you know, it's like, I don't know, first, maybe they're like ashamed. I mean, and I was ashamed for years. And like, I'll sit down in front of a microphone and talking to 1,000 people. And like, I just say some shit that I've never even said to my wife and going, what the fuck did I just do? Mm-hmm. You know, but it's just like, I don't know. It's like sometimes even if you're talking in a dead space, it's like, you feel like somebody's listening. So it's like, if you can find those, you know, I you know, I'm not going to say his name, but he's a real one, you know, and he's that guy that if shit hits the fan, he'll be there. Yeah. In a fucking heartbeat.
Yeah.
You know? And so
you need that.
I probably don't call him enough, but either way.
Yeah. 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 And we're all, I think, available for that, especially people in that type of, you know, background industry, whatever. But I don't know, we lose a lot of people that just don't feel like they can, or not sure what they need, or don't want to be a burden, you know, all those things. It's like, it's hard, tough. Yeah.
That's the one thing that I've just tried to convince myself is that, like, cause it's hard. I mean, and I, you know, I can't speak from a female's perspective on it. I really can't. But as a man, like, you never want to, it's hard to talk to anybody if you're struggling with some shit, you know, and maybe it's how you're raised or whatever, you know, but the way that I was raised, it's like, you're a man, damn it, put your boots on and go to fucking work. Like, that's just, you know, and we don't have problems, and we don't, you know, if we do, you know what, go drink a beer and go to bed on it, get up the next morning and go again. And it's hard to let yourself even admit it to your own self. Like, and, so yeah, it's just like, I wish people could sometimes just get over the fact that it's, you know, you're not a burden, you know? I mean, now if you're going to use people to constantly just be an echo chamber, and you're not going to fix yourself, or you're not going to seek help or whatever, then yeah, you are a burden. But if you genuinely need to just talk to somebody,
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know how I can say it enough to people just to be like, you know, you're not a burden.
No.
You are a human being. You have the ability to talk to other people, and the receiving end of that siren should have enough respect as a human and as a friend or a loved one or whatever to try.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's like, see that.
Well, and even I'll back you up a step, you know, even if you are a burden at the moment and you can't get it together, we still want to help. And it's, that burden is better than your absence.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, yeah. So, you know, trying to figure out how to run a business and all that. But I've got a lot of good people that are working with us and, you know, want to see it succeed. And it's tough. I built it with her. So it's like, well, now it's not the same. But it's also, you know, I built it with her, so I don't want to see it lost, you know?
Sure.
And what I do is not the safest way to make a living. And, you know, we always knew that. I mean, it's something we discussed early on, whether we wanted to fly together, whether we were willing to do that, you know, once we had kids. And that was just something that we felt like was who we were, and it was part of it. And if we were lost together, then that'd be terrible. But it was a risk we were willing to take, you know. And now I'm in a different position where, you know, I want to come home to those kids real bad, you know, more than before. And so it makes it a little tough some days, you know, to do the same job. But, you know, I don't think that the reasons that I do it and the risk assessment that I'd gone through previously has changed, but there's a different perspective to it, you know?
Sure.
And so it's, you know, weighing that, and obviously I don't want to make any huge decisions in a, you know, the short time frame after such an event like that, you know, but so, you know, just kind of working through all that process as far as from a personal standpoint, what I really want, what I want to do. And the business is still, you know, fledgling. It's tight, you know, to get by. And so you're grinding. And that was a contributor to, you know, some of her difficulties was just, you know, I was gone a lot and we worked pretty hard and we scrimped and pushed to, you know, put everything back in it. And, you know, she would have liked to go on more trips and, you know, have some more time together and all those things. And so, you know, you always weigh that and try to balance that, but, you know, more than usual right now. So,
man, yeah, Brandon, I applaud the shit out of you for doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
It's pretty. Not a lot of people that could do it. You know, it's pretty damn amazing.
They can do it. They just shouldn't have to.
They shouldn't have to. Yeah. No, I mean, obviously, you don't wish it on anybody, but you know, it's it's real easy to hang your boots up, you know, and just say this isn't for me, or
Yeah.
you know, life changed and this is a horrible situation, and you know, but it's like you got these kids.
Yeah.
You're running and gunning, doing your thing, being a dad, trying to build this business, and I don't know.
I think if I decided to let it go, because of all those things that I discussed, you know, that whether it was a year and things just kind of started to smooth out, or 10 years and the kids were more self-sufficient or getting to be out of the house, or 30 years on my deathbed, I think that might be something that I regret. So I'm not hanging it up yet.
That was a good one, dude. Had me fucking tearing up. Man.
So you're in real estate. What? Or you mentioned real estate contacts. What do you do? I'm just totally shifting gears because I'm sick of
it's okay.
it all
Yeah,
back.
that's what I do for a day job. And my, you know, my wife and I, we've got this pie in the sky pipe dream of kind of starting up our own, remodel company. And it's always just been there, just kind of burning and burning. And we almost have an opportunity to maybe start some things. And so in a weird way, I've kind of been shifting my mindset towards that. And it's just something, yeah, sorry, give me, she's the best fucking person I know. Legit. And, yeah, I just, it's just something that we want to do together. And, I want my kids to see us do that together so that they can propagate that into the world, and so
they're the sponges. They'll see that more than anything you could pound into their head with words.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, honestly, I'm still doing real estate. It is how I make money and it's slow. The industry's slow. Interest rates are terrible. There's nothing on the market, and Durango, for some fucking reason, still thinks that they can sell a house for $1 million. It's really not worth it. And, and so it's depressing. It's a super cutthroat industry. Mm-hmm. And now I think you're seeing it more than we've seen it even the last 2 years where, things are slowing down and I will say that it doesn't feel the same as it did. It doesn't matter about the sales or the money or anything like that, but you can see a shift in people and humans in the way that they're interacting with other agents in the industry, and everybody's fighting for their own family, right? Whether they made all this money in the last 2 years and started living beyond their means or whatever. Now they've got to it's like, I've just never been of the mentality of, slitting somebody's throat or, stepping on their head to get to the top. It's just, and so I've got a bit of a distaste about the real estate industry right now in my mouth. And, definitely, even though it's less money, I'm being very selective on who I work with, and absolutely am willing to kind of, put a deal in somebody else's lap if I just immediately don't think that it's a good fit. Mm-hmm. And part of that is that I'm really trying to focus my time and energy on, we've got an opportunity right now that, I don't think a lot of people in life get, and we may be able to actually do this remodel thing, and it's just always been a dream. So I'm like, if we don't chase it, if we don't go for it, I've failed so many times. It's like, fuck it, you're going to fail, you'll rebound, you'll be fine, Mm-hmm. So it's like, you're right there on the cusp. It's like, why would we not? And, I enjoy, like, when we walked the house this afternoon, actually, right, doing a takeoff on it, and, and she's pricing this and I'm pricing this, and we're talking about the design, and it's just like, I enjoy it, Mm-hmm. It's like, that time is so fleeting, and, it's just one of those things that I would rather spend it with people I give a shit about, mm-hmm. Genuinely love, genuinely care. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. But yeah, I still do real estate on a daily basis. I work for the Wells Group here in town, and sorry if you guys heard any of that, but it's the truth. And that's what this podcast does for me. So, but yeah, man, I did electrical contracting forever, and, found myself in Texas, super depressed, burnout, and I just didn't want to do it anymore. I was like, I need a life change. I need a lifestyle change. I was seeing, we were doing 16-hour shifts, driving an hour and a half one way, hour and a half back, and the dinner would be in the oven on the warmer, mm-hmm. and I'd go to sleep, and so I was living in Texas with my family, seeing my kids one day a week. And I was like, man, that's not a way to live a life. Yeah, we had a shit ton of money in the bank, and that kind of masks what is real. Mm. And we came back, and I needed a huge change, and real estate was that and is that. And I love real estate. I love transactions. I love doing the contract side of it. I like meeting interesting people, and no deal's ever the same. So it's always moving. It's always shaking. Yeah. And I enjoy that. But I will say, like, I'm enjoying it less, because not because of the people, you're always going to have good clients. You're always going to have bad clients. It's just nature of the beast. But right now, getting to see like, I think what somebody called it the other day was like the seedy underbelly of the real estate agent world, you know, and it's a shame. Yeah. I don't blame anybody or fault anybody. They've got to provide for their families, but you shouldn't have to provide by slitting somebody else's throat to advance yourself, you know. So yeah, man, we'll see where the next couple of months take me. But yeah, I'm hoping for positive things, and you know, I don't know, man. I just want to keep meeting interesting people. In all reality, like it's good for me. Like you know, before we got on air, you know, I was talking about it's like these conversations are healing. You know, and I'm trying to be strong and talk to you, and I say one thing about my wife, and I start breaking down like a fucking baby, you know. But I know that there's a healing process there, and I don't know where that stems from. I don't know what I'm trying to recover from. But talking to people genuinely that want to talk to me, it's like, if I could figure out a way to do this for a living,
there you go.
100%.
So besides meeting people and getting them to bare their soul on a podcast, what do you do for fun?
I play music.
Okay.
Quite a bit. I was in a rock band for a long time, and we traveled, we toured, and we don't really do it much anymore. We kind of we still are writing music, but we exchange files across the state, and it takes about a year to write a song. Very lengthy process, but you know, that's what I do. And then honestly, it's like, I feel like as much as it sometimes feels like a burden, but like soccer, gymnastics dad, I feel like I'm, you know, a soccer dad mom.
Right.
Just, you know, but I, you know, I enjoy that in a weird way. It's like, that's my, you know, I don't ever want my kids like, and this is super genuine and really awkward because I got a text and I don't even want to talk about it right now, but I don't ever want my kids to worry about me being on the sideline. You know, like that's a big deal for me. And it's like, that stems from some shit in the past, but it's just one of those things. It's like, so I enjoy it. I enjoy watching them grow and develop in gymnastics or soccer or whatever that is, or, you know, music or skateboard. I could care less. I just want to watch them and be like, hey, I'm here if I can help, if I can do whatever. Right. And in a weird way, it's like, you know, my son, I love him to death, and I know he gets pissed at me. You know, you're not my coach. I know that, but I'm also the guy that'll be down there if you want to go play soccer anytime on the field. But in a weird way, I do know that he doesn't ever have to wonder if I'm there watching him on the sidelines. He doesn't have to like look at another parent, like, you know, running out after they win the championship on the field and grabbing his, you know, he knows I'm there,
right?
You know, 110%. And so that's like, you know, this last tournament was kind of weighing like, oh God, dude, this is the last one of the year, and it's a lot of travel and it's a big commitment. But I still enjoyed it, you know, and I enjoyed it with him, you know, granted as you know, an observer, right? But yeah, that's it, man. What about you after you turn the lights off? what do you do for fun? I mean, your day job is what most people would be like, that's so fucking fun.
Yeah, I mean, I do love to fly, but, you know, unfortunately, running the business is mostly not flying.
Yeah.
But I do love to fly. I love to teach, you know, so teaching's fun. You know, I do enjoy that. And a lot of pilots, you know, teach because they have to. And it's a way to get through. And I like teaching. I think it's fun. It's really neat to see somebody that, you know, helicopters have a really steep learning curve too. So it's like, you know, it's like anything else once you get it. But to start, it's overwhelming, you know. And so the idea that like the original guys, Sikorsky and whatever, built this thing and flew it and lived to tell the tale is amazing. But so I do enjoy that, taking somebody that was like, you know, rightfully scared. I mean, you know, if I jump out, you're done, you know. Yeah. And to take them and then they go like, I think I got it, you know. So I do enjoy that, but it is, you know, it's a job like anything else. I like riding on my dirt bike, you know. Trails and stuff around here is a lot of fun for me. I haven't been able to do that a whole lot with a 3 and an 8-year-old, but you know, I do that when I can, and that's probably what I do if I get time. Yeah, go ride.
How'd you meet JJ?
Let's see. Somebody turned me on to him. Might have been Ben back when he was with his previous firm. and we were looking for advertising and had talked about wanting to do air tacticals, shooting from the helicopter. And I think it was Ben that told me to call to say there's this local gun guy.
Yeah.
So then I do remember seeing, JJ's trucks, right? He's always got the flamboyant trucks,
I think he just sold the one that was like wrapped, like the F6000 or whatever.
Right.
It's like now he's like incognito.
He's just like my cousin. So I tease cops, but cops are always going through vehicles like that, and they're always flashy. So yeah, he's, it's always hard to tell what he's in. But anyway, I do remember I saw his truck at Walmart, at Walmart for whatever. And, I was like, look at this dude, who's Colorado gunfighter, So, I found him one way or another, either Ben or just from that. But it was funny because I call and I don't know why he thought. I go, hey, left a message, typical cop doesn't answer his phone. So, hey, I'm, interested in run a helicopter business, interested in, collaborating with you on this and, wanting to shoot from the helicopter. And he finally gets back to me and he's like, yeah, bro, we're not like that into, hunting. We're more kind of like black guns. And I'm like, you got the message, right? We're talking about helicopters, shooting from the helicopter. This isn't live. I think we're on the same page, So he's like, yeah, I'm interested in that. So yeah, we've kind of been buddies since then.
That's huge in Texas, man. That was one of the things, like, we moved down there as a family, but like I met all these guys through work and they're like Texas born and bred boys. Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh, dude, we're going out to the ranch this weekend, just mowing down hogs. And I'm like, what? And they're showing me videos. And like, some of them are from, like a side by side. But a couple pictures, they do like helicopter tours and it's like the tracer round. It's like, it's wild, man. That's pretty fucking American right there.
Right.
That's
that's hard to find elsewhere.
I think that's about as far as it gets. Yeah. So if you got a American flag shirt, a mullet, maybe some of those Neff glasses, it's like the only way you're turning it to 11 past shooting out of a helicopter.
Yeah.
Oh shit, man.
Yeah, he's a good dude. Just a good guy to know. So we've always trying to, he's always scheming too. So always trying to hook something up with, working with these guys, working with this guy.
Yeah.
So good guy to know.
He's got a bunch of businesses, man. So yeah. Well, Brandon, dude, thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on, man. I genuinely appreciate you talking. And if you ever do open up the simulator to...
Oh, it's open. I mean, we haven't done like events, but certainly.
Just let me know.
Yeah,
I want to come check it out. Like it just seems like such a wild ride. Maybe not for $800, but depending on your pricing scheme, we'll,
So we just, so people know, we do it at $300 an hour as part of our training, but we would like to, open it up for just short stints for people to get to check it out. Just almost like an open house type thing, pizza and sodas or beers maybe. And, I think it's a way to kind of reach out to the community instead of like, oh, that helicopter guy that always flies over our house, it's, oh, we've been up there. They're all right. They do search and rescue. They teach people, so hopefully it helps in that regard. And then, maybe the kid that's like, graduating high school and mom and dad are, what colleges are you applying to? And he's afraid to say like, I think I want to be a helicopter pilot, could say, hey dad, let's go to this thing, and
this is what I'm thinking. Are you fucking crazy? Yeah.
Just a way of kind of, open it up, letting people check it out without kind of the, the seriousness of like, I'm ready to be a pilot, It's kind of, come check us out. So.
Nice. That's awesome, man. What happens if you wreck in the simulator? Is it like go up in flames in the classes?
I mean, it stops, right? They wanted it to be, it is something that they kind of spend a lot of time with in the training as far as, they don't want you to allow new pilots to crash because of the negative association. But they, we do allow more experienced pilots to crash. And so you wear a seatbelt. I mean, it's not violent. You're unlikely to be injured, but it's unpleasant. You'd rather not.
Oh, I'm definitely coming. You said there'd be beers, right?
Yeah, we'll do some of that. So yeah, we'll definitely do some events like that. And we don't want to make that a prohibitive or even a cost at all. We haven't really structured that out.
Sweet.
See what that looks like, but it'd be very approachable.
Nice. That's awesome, man. Yeah.
Maybe something like, $50 gets you a pizza and a beer and a t-shirt and 15 minutes in the sim type thing. Something. There's some revenue, but it's not.
If you throw a bouncy house in there, I'm
right.
there 100%. 100%. Oh, Brandon, thank you, brother. I really appreciate you, man.
Good to meet you.
You as well.
Have you ever felt?
Are you listening? Damn. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.